We're around the mid-season mark in the NFL right now, so it's time for some mid-season quarterback grades. This video is entirely my opinion. There's no real strict criteria, except for the fact that every quarterback in this video was qualified statistically. Now, what does that mean? That means that they have, through 9 weeks, thrown 14 passes per game. That's 14 times 9. That's 126 passes. You got it? Good. The video begins right after this. Before I begin, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Football Head Coach 24. It's an officially licensed game by the NFL Players Association with real players. It's a simulated management game and it is awesome. Let me show you what it's all about. Now, when I'm starting off, my team isn't very good, so I'm going to go to the store that they have and buy different types of packs of players. They have Mega Elite Gold packs. Let me open a couple to see what we get. Nice. We got Joey Bosa. Look at all the talent here. Open another one. We got Josh Jacobs, one of the best running backs in the league. Let's go. Matt Prater's one of the best kickers. Jimmy G, my guy. Open another one. Jason Kelsey, Hall of Famer. As an Eagles fan, I love that. But they got other types of packs too that you can have. These are called special rarity packs. Let's open a couple of them. I'm going to start off with the Halloween pack. Get some more defensive help at cornerback. Quality gold. Casey Hayward, he's a stud player. Extremely underrated. Another pack, TOTW, which stands for Team of the Week pack. Buy that. Let's see what we got. More defense. Another cornerback. Mike Hilton, insanely good player. My team is going to be so stacked. Let's look at my improved roster. Got a bunch of loaded talent now. Offensively, defensively, this team is unbelievable. Like with every roster, you have strengths and weaknesses, and what this game allows you to do is set your offensive and defensive mindsets to your strengths. So I'm going to change my philosophy and my emphasis more to running the ball offensively. You can see 65% run offense. Let's get a game going here. My team, the Troop Respecters, as you would expect. Starts off, Jimmy Garoppolo hits Noah Fant for a touchdown. Ridiculous. I'm already up 7-0. Let's go. Then Joe Mixon punches it in. 14-0 already. Haven't even broken a sweat. Let's see. I hope the game result wasn't too bad. Oh, it was. 70-7, dude. That's ridiculous. I destroyed him. Go and download Football Head Coach 24 on your phone right now. It's awesome. Once again, it's an officially licensed NFL Players Association game with real players. If you love football, you will absolutely love it. I guarantee it. Josh Dobbs, Arizona/Minnesota. Coming into the season for a team that was expected to be the worst team in the league, Josh Dobbs did probably about as well as you would expect, which wasn't very good for Arizona. They then got rid of him now that Kyler Murray's coming back at the trade deadline. He's now with Minnesota to help replace Kirk Cousins. The fact is that he might have a good game every now and then, but he's always going to be most known for being an astronaut in his spare time instead of a quarterback. Grade D. Desmond Ridder, Atlanta. It says a lot that Desmond Ritter's season is more known for his DoorDash commercial than it is for his play on the field, which was pretty terrible. Not only did he not throw for a lot of touchdown passes, he also fumbled the ball and was a huge reason for the Falcons not being better. Now he's been benched for Taylor Heineke, and his future in the NFL is seemingly in jeopardy. Grade D-. Lamar Jackson, Baltimore. This is the best season, at least statistically passing so far, that Lamar's had since his 2019 MVP year. He's also still capable of taking games over on the ground, as we already know. The Ravens are a quiet 7-2, and because this is a weak MVP year, Lamar is back in the MVP discussion again so far at this moment. I would say that he's unironically been one of the best quarterbacks in the league so far this year, and so he gets a grade of B+. Josh Allen, Buffalo. Allen's stats are great, as you might expect, but the Bills haven't been as good, sitting at just 5-4 and currently out of the playoffs as of the recording of this video. I think Allen is who he is. He's going to generate a lot of touchdowns, passing and running, but he's also going to be prone to some interceptions and turnovers. Honestly, I think the Bills will be best served by just sending all their receivers on a Hail Mary every single play and letting Allen run for 20 yards, because that's the best, most efficient guaranteed play offensively that they have whenever he's ad-libbing on the ground. I expect them to pick it up in the win column in the second half and get into the playoffs, but as it stands, I would say that Allen's current grade is about a B-. Bryce Young, Carolina. I was not a fan of Bryce Young coming into the league, and so far he has done absolutely nothing to change my opinion. In fact, he's only reinforced it. What exactly is he supposed to be good at? He's not big, he doesn't have a strong arm, he's not a freak athlete. I don't know how the hell this guy went first overall. The best quarterback performance this season for Carolina was by Andy Dalton when Young missed week 3 at Seattle. I'm just saying, if you're the first overall pick and you're getting outplayed by Andy Dalton 2023, even as a rookie, that's not a good sign. Young fans will make excuses for his supporting cast, but this guy does nothing well, and I don't see him getting better. Grade F. Justin Fields, Chicago. Fields really has played only 5 games. He's missed the last 3, really 4 because he left the other one early. He had 2 great games, but I would believe that those are more of an outlier outlier than the rule, as his first 3 games were terrible in continuation of his first 2 terrible seasons. I just don't really understand a lot of the hype for him despite all of his physical gifts. You guys know, if you follow me for a while, you guys know how I feel about Fields. I'm not a fan of his. I think he's terrible. And once again, it's another lost season for the Bears, and I have a feeling that he won't be on the team next year. Or maybe he will. It's the Bears. They're stupid. Grade D+. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati. It looks as though Burrow was playing possum his first couple weeks or whatever, because he had a famous calf injury and he was putting up historically terrible numbers. The Bengals were 1-3. And then over the last 4 weeks, he finally looks like a guy who's considered one of the elite quarterbacks in the league again. I still think it's interesting that a lot of his wins come in low-scoring games, or at least his defense does a great job of keeping the score down for him. He's kind of boring to watch and he doesn't have a very strong arm, but when he's healthy, it's undeniable that he is effective, at least until his team needs him to lead a game-winning or go-ahead drive in the Super Bowl or conference championship game. But I digress. His last 4 games have been A-worthy, but his first 4 were so terrible, I'm going to split the difference and give him a C. Deshaun Weinstein. As much as I would like to crap on Watson for being a piece of shit, this is supposed to be what he's done on the field. And once again, his on-field production has been pretty spotty since he's gotten to Cleveland. He's essentially missed 4 games, although the last 2 games that he started and finished, he's had pretty good stats and the Browns won in blowout fashion. He's still probably the best quarterback on the Browns roster, which isn't saying a lot, but he still hasn't done enough, on the field that is, to justify getting all the money he got. And really, the sport would be better if he just went away. But judging strictly off of what he's done on the field so far this season, I would give him a grade of D. Dak Prescott, Dallas. Cowboys are 5-3, and Dak once again has good stats, but it's basically the same thing as it's always been. In his 2 biggest tests of the season versus the 49ers and versus the Eagles, he got blown out and was horrible versus the Niners on the road. And versus the Eagles, he played pretty well for the most part, but he did what typical Dak does, which is come up short in the biggest moments with a chance to win the game. He's the same guy he's always been. He'll juice his stats against bad teams and bad defenses, but when you really need him in the biggest moments, he's not there. Grade C+. Russell Wilson, Denver. For all the talk about how terrible the Broncos have been under Sean Payton thus far, Wilson has actually improved noticeably from last season, which isn't necessarily a high bar or a big accomplishment, but his improvement has happened as expected. Still, he isn't the force that he once was, and while he's still capable of playing well, the days of him being a truly elite quarterback like he was in Seattle are done, in my opinion. So far, I would give him a grade of C. Jared Goff, Detroit. Credit to the Lions. They have lived up to the preseason hype and have continued the momentum they had in the second half of last season, and Goff is a big part of that. He still isn't a dominant quarterback, but ironically enough, I would say he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league right now that's currently in flux at quarterback position, and he's still capable of some truly terrible performances like his game against Baltimore a couple weeks ago. And I still don't trust him in the playoffs, but he has given Detroit stability at quarterback position and has a good thing going, so I'll give him a B-. Jordan Love, Green Bay. Love started out the season on a heater, throwing 6 touchdowns and no interceptions in the first 2 weeks, but since then, he's been really bad, and honestly, for a guy who's in his 4th season, I expected better. Of course, when you're following 2 straight first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks, the vantage point from your fan base can be a little bit warped, but still, thus far, Love has been nothing to write home about, and as I mentioned, I don't really have as long of a leash for him as I do with other rookie quarterbacks, because he's not a rookie. Unless he starts to show some serious improvement in the second half of the season, I really don't know how long Green Bay should put their faith in him. Grade D. CJ Stroud, Houston. One of the most unexpectedly great rookie seasons, or at least half of a rookie season in recent memory, or NFL history really. Stroud currently has a 14-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. He's coming off of an incredible game versus Tampa Bay where he threw 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's by far been the best rookie quarterback thus far and one of the best rookie quarterbacks in recent memory, and he has a truly horrible team in Houston at 4-4. It's still too early to really come up with any concrete comparisons to who he plays like, but it does look like he may finally be the person to break the Ohio State NFL quarterback curse, and no, Joe Burrow doesn't count. For a rookie quarterback, he gets an A+ grade, but there's no curve for me. I look at what he's done all season thus far, and I would therefore have to give him a grade of B, which by my tough grading standards is excellent for a rookie in the first half of the season. Let's just hope he doesn't have the same off-field habits as Houston's last franchise quarterback. Gardner Minshew, Indianapolis. As a Anthony Richardson supporter, it's sad to see how his rookie year went. He was constantly injured and leaving games early before he finally had a season-ending shoulder injury, which has led to Minshew getting most of the reps at at quarterback. Minshew is basically what he's always been. He's a guy who shows flashes of good play and capable play, but he's obviously not elite. He also is fumble prone, not terrible, but nothing to necessarily write home about. But he still is one of the better backups in the NFL, for what that's worth. Grade D. Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville. Much like with Detroit, Jacksonville has continued and built off of the momentum they built in the second half of last season, and Lawrence has been steady and one of the better quarterbacks in the league over the last 5 weeks after a disappointing 1-2 start. His stats still aren't eye-popping though, although he has finally brought stability and respectability to the quarterback position in Jacksonville for the first time in a very, very long time. However, it still feels like there is another leap that he could take, and it feels like if Jacksonville is ever going to win anything important, he's going to have to take that next step into being a true super-duper star instead of just a well-known star quarterback. But unsurprisingly, he is much better and improved leaps and bounds from the first year and a half of his career. Grade B-. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City. How do you grade Mahomes? Do you grade him on a curve knowing how good his A game is, or do you grade him just on this season and ignore his track record? Strictly just off of what we've seen thus far this year, the Chiefs are 7-2, but ironically, it's been the defense that has carried them most of the time. The Chiefs' offense has been extremely inconsistent, and so has Mahomes, who is currently in the midst of easily his worst season individually thus far. He still deserves the benefit of the doubt in terms of finding his way out of it, but the offense in Kansas City isn't looking inevitable the way that it's always been since Mahomes has gotten there. I think he will turn around, but just based off of the first half of this season, I'm going to have to give him a B- grade, which is disappointing by his standards. Justin Stafford, LA Chargers. Herbert is basically Lucy from Charlie Brown, who pulls the football away at the very last moment when Charlie Brown's about to come kick it. Every time you fucking buy in on this guy and you think he's finally going to take the next step, he has a stinker or two, and his inconsistency is maddening. That's not to say he's not a good quarterback, because he is, but he hasn't really gotten better since his rookie year. You just never know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. His A game is still jaw-dropping because of his physical tools, but he has several stinkers, and you're just like, where did this come from? Why is he not better? I give him a grade of C+, but I really thought he'd be better by now. John Stafford, LA Rams. Yes, John is Matthew Stafford's real first name. I bet you didn't know that. I shouldn't be surprised that a 35-year-old with a bunch of mileage on him isn't having a great statistical season. I still can't believe this guy actually won a Super Bowl in 2021. He's been in the league now 14 years, and that's the only season in his entire career where he's won any playoff game, let alone 4. His first year with McVay was pretty magical, but even with Cooper Kupp coming back and the emergence of Puka Nacua, Stafford's numbers remain very pedestrian at best. He's still basically the same guy he's always been, a lot like Herbert. Physical tools are always there, the super strong arm, the highlight reel is amazing, but the consistency is just lacking. My grade for him so far, D+. Jimmy Garoppolo, Las Vegas. So far, as much as I hate to say it, this season has been a win for all the people who felt that Garoppolo was nothing but a product of Kyle Shanahan, as he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, and that's not including the 3 games that he's missed or been benched in. The Raiders under McDaniels were a mess, and McDaniels was Jimmy's guy, and he recruited him to Las Vegas for a lot of money, and Jimmy G's limitations have shown. He's not a great decision maker, doesn't have a strong arm. I feel like I need to throw up for saying this about my husband because he's so gorgeous looking, but those are the facts. He's also not durable, and I have a feeling he'll be on another team once this year's over. Grade D for devastatingly handsome Tua Tagovailoa, Miami. The discourse around Tua is exactly the same thing it was with Jared Goff back when he first started under Sean McVay. Here's a guy who went from being mid to bad to overnight putting up incredible stats under this hotshot young coach, and people were giving the coach credit for quarterbacks' throws. Now, with Tua, the difference is that Goff had an average to slightly above average arm. Tua has a noodle arm, so his bad plays look worse. He has his heavily devoted fan base that goes after anybody who criticizes him or thinks that he stinks. I don't think Tua stinks. I also don't think he's quite as good as his incredible numbers would lead you to believe. I don't fear playing against him, basically. I fear Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle's somebody you have to respect, but Tua is just kind of whatever. Still, I would say that he has been one of the better quarterbacks based on what's actually happened on the field so far this year. And he deserves his credit because he's the one throwing the ball. But I don't think he is as great as his stats say. So I'm going to give him a B grade. That's odd. A bunch of people wearing Tua shirts have just showed up outside my house carrying shotguns. I wonder what they're here for. Let me go check. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota. Poor Kirk. As always, his raw numbers were great and his win-loss record was literally mediocre, 4-4. But none of that matters now because he pours his Achilles and is out for the year, and it is most likely done in Minnesota as his contract is up after this year. I'm not going to sit here and try and argue that Kirk is some great quarterback who's misunderstood, because that'd be kind of hypocritical of me. He's really in that same tier as like Dak Prescott and Tony Romo and Phillip Rivers. Good to very good quarterbacks who you have absolutely zero fear of playing against and you do not trust in big moments. But still, I do feel like he's better than his reputation as this middling quarterback. I do think he's objectively good, although again, I don't think he's as good as his numbers, but he's still good. Grade B-. Derek Carr, New Orleans. New team, same Derek. The Carr roller coaster is always right on time. Through 9 games thus far, his numbers are not great, not terrible. His win-loss record's actually 5-4, and he started to pick it up the last few weeks, but this is what Derek Carr does, and Saints fans might not be aware of this, but he does this where he will lure you in around midseason. His team will have a good record or a respectable record, and then boom, before you know it, your team is 8-9 or they're 7-10, and Carr has a bunch of shitty games in a row. He lures you in like this, and he gets you thinking, hey, maybe he's turned the corner, maybe we can do something, and then boom, he has diarrhea and shits all over himself, and he's crying in the post-game press conference with his eyeliner. It's really disgusting. Raiders fans know the song and dance I'm talking about, but Saints fans, you're in for a treat. I would be stunned if the Saints have a great second half of the season and Carr has a great second half of the season. The fall off is coming. Grade C-. Mac Jones, New England. Mac was entering a make or break year this year after his extremely disappointing sophomore season, and he's just continued to get worse, despite the fact that Bill O'Brien becoming offensive coordinator was supposed to help him get back to his rookie status. I said it before, but for a guy who coming out of the draft was seen as the most pro-ready quarterback, it's not a good sign that he's gotten progressively worse each year. Now, I know he doesn't have great receivers and a great offensive line, but he certainly is not doing much to consistently elevate poor surrounding cast around him like the best quarterbacks do. I also hate him because his suckitude has helped to embolden Brady fans to acting like Brady was the only reason the Patriots were good for 20 years, which just annoys the shit out of me. Mac Jones, he fucking stinks. He'll still have the occasional respectable game, but for the most part, he fucking stinks. Grade D-. Daniel Jones, Giants. For as terrible as Mac Jones is, at least he can take solace in the fact that he is not the worst quarterback in the league with the last name Jones, although knowing how bad Daniel Jones is, and now that he has a torn ACL and is out for the rest of the season, I don't know how much longer Daniel that is, will be in the NFL. Who knows if he'll even be back with the Giants. As an Eagles fan, I hope he is, because he's terrible and it's a free 2 wins every year as long as he's under center. This year's been no different. He missed 3 games with an injury, came back, tore his ACL early in a blowout loss to the Raiders, now is done for the rest of the year. But really, I mean, just look at his numbers. 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 30 sacks. He's just not good. The one thing that he can do is scramble, and that's how they squeaked out a fluke season last year with a couple fluke wins. Defenses didn't know how to cover this guy. The one thing he could do was scramble, and he was a good athlete. I say was like he died. He's still alive. But because he's a dork-looking white dude, it caught defenses off guard. Oh my god, this guy can scramble. But now that defenses have finally learned how to cover that better, he once again went back to being complete dog shit. I say all of this to say grade F. Zach Wilson, Jets. I talked about how Mac Jones isn't the worst quarterback in the league with the last name Jones, and Daniel Jones somehow might not even be the worst quarterback who plays in MetLife Stadium, because Zach Wilson is just as bad, if not worse. Some might say, oh, it's not fair to Wilson because coming into this year, Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be the starter, and he tore his Achilles, 4 snaps into the season? And my response is, this dude was picked 2nd overall 3 years ago, okay? He's supposed to be a franchise-changing quarterback when he's fucking garbage. He has been carried so hard by the Jets defense in his wins this year. His best performance was a loss against Kansas City where he had like a good quarter and a half, and that's it. This guy is fucking terrible. I know we joke about him being the MILF hunter and all this other crap, but this guy cannot play quarterback at the NFL level. And at this point in this era, when quarterback has every rule going their way to make it easier for him, if you're still struggling and you still suck balls in year 3, you're a fucking bust. Grade F. Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia. Despite being a famous Eagles fan, I'm not going to be biased in favor of Jalen Hurts. I'm going to tell it like it is. He's finally started to pick it up over the last 3 weeks consistently after his horrible performance versus the Jets, where he basically lost them the game with a game-losing interception. He also was inconsistent early on, but guess what? The Eagles' offense is still elite, and he is the engine. He's the guy that makes the offense go. He makes a lot of difficult throws if you actually watch him play. If you want to say that he's not an elite quarterback, fine. Is he Peyton Manning? Is he as good as prime Aaron Rodgers? Is he Patrick Mahomes? No, he's a really, really good player. And all the people who say that he sucks to try and be contrarian and to get reactions, it doesn't work. And believe it or not, again, because this is one of the weaker quarterback seasons in history, combined with the fact that the Eagles are currently 8-1 with the best record in the league, and their defense, by the way, hasn't been good. So this isn't an example of a quarterback being carried by his defense, despite what a lot of Jalen Hurts haters and Eagles haters say. He's a big reason for their success. I think he's a very good quarterback. Everything considered, I'd give him a grade of B thus far. And as much as you hate it, if he keeps up the way he's been playing the last couple weeks, the second half of the season, and the Eagles finish with the best record in the league, he might win MVP. Kenny Pickett, Pittsburgh. Pickett is literally good only in the fourth quarter when his team is losing. I have no idea how this dude has a 5-3 record. Well, I do know because his defense keeps him in the game most of the time. Whenever this guy's defense doesn't keep the score down, it's a loss because he's not very good. But he does the exact same shit that Tom Brady did for years, where he plays like crap for 3 quarters, his defense keeps the score down for him, keeps him in the game, and then he has all of a sudden this drive in the fourth quarter where he turns into the fucking Terminator and starts throwing dimes and pulls out the win. It's just, I don't know how to describe it, but it's annoying to watch and I hate it. I would give him a grade of D, despite the fact that the Steelers somehow continue to keep winning in spite of their crappy offense and quarterback. Geno Smith, Seattle. Geno was a feel-good story last season after his out-of-nowhere performance after years of being labeled as a draft bust. This season is not going quite as well. He's not terrible, and the Seahawks are 5-3, but some of his old inconsistencies have started to pop up again. And like I said, last year threw for over 30 touchdowns. This year, only 9 thus far. His numbers are down. He's still better than he was before he came to Seattle, but he's not quite as good as last season. Grade C-. Brock Purdy, San Francisco. Purdy is one of the most polarizing quarterbacks, similar to Tua, where a lot of the good that he does gets credited to his head coach, and when he struggles or makes a bad play, people say that he sucks. My gut says that Purdy actually has some talent, but much like Tua and some other quarterbacks, I don't think he's quite as good as his raw numbers would suggest, and I certainly don't think he is as good as his, 11-0 career start would suggest. He's now lost 3 in a row after a ridiculously hot start to the season. He was bound to come back to earth at some point, so I'm not shocked by it. I still think he is not a bad player, though, but his last couple weeks, especially since he's thrown some terrible interceptions in crunch time, do bring his grade down. I give him a grade of B. Baker Mayfield, Tampa Bay. It's not quite Geno Smith from last season, but Baker has kind of rejuvenated his career a little bit with a decent showing thus far with Tampa Bay, although he's still 3-5 and his numbers aren't historically great or anything. Tampa started off the year 3-1 and Baker was doing really well, but the last 4 weeks have been back to normal or closer to normal. Much like last year, I forget who the quarterback for Tampa Bay was last year. He was completely forgettable, not fun to watch. But much like last year, the Tampa Bay offense isn't anything to write home about, and the Bucs in general aren't a very good team. But Baker still has had a better season than what he's had the last couple years, although I feel like the nice little start he had was a bit of a fluke. Grade C-. Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee. Remember, this is just for the first half of the season. Tannehill is, as of right now, no longer the Titans' starting quarterback. He got injured, and now he's officially benched for Will Levis. And unless Levis gets hurt or completely falls off the map and starts sucking, which I guess isn't out of the realm of possibility, Tannehill's not going to see the field again. Hell, he might retire in general. So who knows? But if he does retire, I don't think it would be a bad time because he was fucking terrible when on the field this year. 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His first 2 years with Tennessee were amazing, but those look like the fluke. His last several years have been much more like his mediocre years with Miami, before the bottom just completely fell out this year. A respectable career, but a terrible season thus far. He got deservedly benched. Grade F. And finally, Sam Howell, Washington. Yes, in 9 games, Sam Howell has been sacked 44 times, although he's quote-unquote only been sacked 4 times over the last 2 weeks. Howell does have some good throws on his highlight reel, and he does have some stretches of play where you go, wow, is this guy actually good? Followed by long stretches of mediocrity, as is to be expected from a Washington quarterback. I don't think he's the long-term answer in Washington, and I think sacks are primarily a quarterback stat. So although his offensive line might not be great, he does hold on to the ball a long time. And unless you're a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers, quarterbacks who are prone to taking sacks are not going to have a lot of success with them. And when I say Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, I'm talking about them at their peaks and their primes, not current additions. Anyway, with Sam Howell, there are some things he does well, so he's not the worst quarterback I've ever seen. In fact, by Washington standards, he's actually pretty good, but in general, he's nothing special, and Washington should be looking for another quarterback. Grade D.